This is a question and answer session with Keith Gilyard, author of True to the Language Game. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, my name is Keith Gilyard, and I am a professor of English at the Pennsylvania University in University Park.
Thank you. Keith has just authored the book True to the Language Game with Routledge. Let's start off by talking about who the target audience for your book was.
The target audience, I think, is graduate students. That's one audience, and then academics in general and other people beyond that who are interested in language issues.
And since this is a collection of both new and previous published work, can I ask what made you decide to put together the collection at this stage in your academic career?
Well, probably getting old, but I was inspired. I've seen it done similarly. Geneva Smitherman has always been an inspiration for me, and she did a book with Routledge about a decade or so ago, I guess, and it was a way, it was a synthesizing move for her, a way to pull together different aspects of her career. And I was inspirational in terms of her putting that collection together. I was at her home, and I asked her why wouldn't she do a book like that, or that she should do a book like that, and she decided to. And so then a decade later, I'm thinking the same thing about myself. Because I am interdisciplinary and I work in different areas, there's work that I do in literary scholarship that is not seen by people who, let's say, are in linguistics or applied linguistics. And sometimes I meet people and they think it's another Keith Gilyard. They say, you're not the Keith Gilyard that does the work in sociolinguistics. And so for me, looking back over a career of about 3 decades now, it was a way for me to try to bring some synthesis and then try to make a coherent whole out of different pieces of my scholarship. And this is what I was up to in doing the book.
It's very interesting, and I'm glad that Geneva sort of inspired you to
Always.
come to Routledge.
Always.
She's a wonderful author. Can you speak about some of the previously unpublished material in the book? What topics did you discuss that were particularly contemporary or timely?
Well, one of the topics that's timely is the students' right to their own language, which was a resolution about language diversity in education passed by the Conference on College Composition and Communication back in '74. So it's old, but also timely because we're still talking about it and still trying to parse out the significance of that resolution. And so one of the new pieces in the book, I think one of the signature pieces, I think is a look 37, 38, 40 years later at that resolution, its reception, and what the continuing impact of that resolution is. So I think that's one piece. Another piece also stems from, it bridges the work, forms a bridge between old and new work, in that I'm looking at the what I would call a code switching paradigm. There's a lot of work that's come out in the last 20 years or so about code switching, the value of code switching, code meshing. I think we have, not that we haven't looked at it enough, but I think we can put more pressure on those formulations, and that's part of what I was up to in some of the new work. And so the final piece is actually the newest piece, which is an essay about Barack Obama and looking at Obama's reception in the public and the connection of the vision that we have about Obama back to Martin Luther King, making that link. So those are some of the new pieces that I think bring some excitement to the old work. It's a way for me to look again at the older work and try to, again, as I said earlier, try to bring some synthesis to it.
Speaking of revisiting your previously published work, has your perspective changed on any of the topics you had written about?
I think it's shifted a little bit. I think not so much change. I don't think my core beliefs have changed that much with respect to language and education, but I think a deepening of the questions, and it's sort of what I was indicating earlier in talking about the code switching paradigm. I think years ago I probably would have signed up enthusiastically as, yeah, that's the answer. We got to get students to learn how to code switch and so on. And I think that now I have a deeper appreciation for what's involved when we ask that question of students, or we make that demand of students, that it might be a little more complicated in some interesting ways. And so I might find myself arguing a little bit against prior work. I did a talk in Philadelphia last summer, and there's a person that I know very well came up to me after and said, hey, this is different than what you said 20 years ago. We should say something a little different. than what we said 20 years ago. But it's not a reversal. I mean, it wasn't a 180 reversal, but it was a deepening or maybe a shifting of angle a little bit. But that's the way I look at the prior work.
Yeah, and your work is so interdisciplinary. It touches upon so many different areas that Routledge is very strong in. Rhetoric, education, sociolinguistics. Can you speak more about how you came to work in so many different areas and what direction, if any particular one, you see yourself going in?
Probably keep them all as long as I can. One of the pieces in the collection is an interview, which brings up this exact question. So it would be interesting for people to look at that. But the journey for me was, I started out focusing on creative writing. I was a poet as a youngster and stayed with that for a long time. Had visions of going into academia as a poet and instructor. And so my first graduate degree was actually an MFA from Columbia University. And so that's what I thought about. And then, as I said in the interview in the book, I sort of underplayed the value of the MFA degree, and that is, they call it a terminal degree. It could be terminal, like terminate your aspirations. But the thing about it was that, even with the degree, the game then was publishing in the genres, poetry or fiction. So with that, and this was the same time that the CUNY system was, City University of New York system was experiencing this growth and this diversification. And so I looked at that as work to be done also. That's teaching too, right? And to me, it's creative as well, right? Because it's not destructive writing, so it's not what we call in brackets creative writing, but I felt that was creative work too. And so I began getting very interested in composition. And so then I did another graduate degree, and that was in educational linguistics. So it was linguistics, education, creative writing. I've been a lifelong, aficionado of literature. So those are the selves that I put together as an academic. Together. Yes, definitely.
Great. And one last question. Actually, I like to ask what questions you get asked most often.
Well, almost the one you just asked. How do you put the different disciplines together in this very work? I get that a lot. Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like your students or readers to know about the book or yourself?
Not really, just that it all started. Whatever started, it all started right here on this island where we are now, the island of Manhattan, which is the island of my birth. And so I'm just happy to be back.
Great, and thanks for being here.
All right,
very glad to have you.
Thank you.